7 warriors with guide dogs. Intuition is linear. Our imaginations are weak. Even the brightest of us only extrapolate from what we know for the most part. We're afraid to really stretch. Raymond Kurzweil RO sells big Labrador tongue lolls down one side. The stairwell is hot, and we're walking down sometimes 2 abreast, sometimes single file, and beginning to pack more closely together. Since the explosion we've made it down to the 33rd floor. I hear an excited buzz in the voices of the people below me, and I can just make out the words, water bottles. Someone has broken open a vending machine, and people are passing cold water bottles up the stairs. A few bottles to the people behind me, then twist open a bottle and take a few swallows. The cold water is a relief, and it tastes sweet compared to the acrid taste of the fumes. Russell nudges my hand. Her nose feels hot, and I wonder if she can smell the water. I bend over and offer her the bottle. She begins to lick the top, and I tilt it just a bit so she can drink the rest. I know she must be thirsty because she hasn't had anything to drink for a while. Many guide dogs don't eat or drink anything in the mornings so they don't have to interrupt work themselves, and Russell is no different. She hasn't had any food or water since last night. She finishes up the bottle and wants more. She licks the last few drops. I can hear her smacking her lips, and then she begins to pant again. She's still thirsty. To relieve, good Russell, I say. I gently grab the sides of her head, just under her ears. I rub her cheeks with my thumbs. Other people around me have stopped to drink some water, too, and I can feel them listening. Good dog. You're doing great. Just keep going. You can do it. I know I have to stay calm for Russell. If I show fear or begin to panic, she will pick up on it and might get scared too. It's important that Russell doesn't sense that I am afraid. If that happened, it would make it harder for us to get out. So far, we are staying calm and focused, and I'm able to control my fear. But there is undercover fear all around us, the general panic level increasing the lower we go. I can hear it in the whispers, feel tension in the footsteps echoing around me. But Russell does not react. She is in the moment, secure in herself and her work. As long as the harness is on, even in a life and death situation, I am confident that Russell will continue to do her job just as she always does. Besides the jet fuel, she can also smell the fear around us. When people are afraid, their autonomic nervous systems react with an increase in sweat gland activity, with the apocrine glands producing secretions through the hair follicles that result in a very faint odor that dogs are able to pick up. They don't exactly smell the emotion of fear, but they can smell the result, an olfactory fear signal inadvertently produced by the body. Dogs are not as visual as people, and their primary sense is smell, said to be 1,000 times more sensitive than that of humans. Russell has more than 200 million olfactory receptors in her nose, while I only have about 5 million. These receptors feed information to the highly developed olfactory lobe in Russell's brain, making her a scent machine. She lives in a world of smell, not sight, and thus is not light dependent, either. We have that in common. She has her ears too. Dogs can hear sound at 4 times the distance humans can. That means if I can hear things happening 20 steps below, she can clearly hear what's going on 80 steps below. She also has a powerful sense of touch. Not only does she hone in on the signals I send through my hand on the upright handle of her harness, but her entire body is covered with touch-sensitive nerve endings, and around her eyes, muzzle, and jaws, she has exquisitely sensitive hairs called vibrisses that continuously feed her information about her environment. On top of that, dogs seem to have a sixth sense, sometimes surprising us by predicting earthquakes or finding their way home from a distant location. They can read our moods through our pheromones, the chemicals produced by our bodies in connection with emotion. They seem sensitive to changes in the Earth's magnetic field and to infrared wavelengths of light. And, like Russell did earlier this morning, dogs can detect sudden changes in barometric pressure, like when a storm is brewing. Thinking about Russell's special abilities gives me confidence we are going to make it out. My teamwork with Russell and the confidence it gives each of us seem to transmit to the people immediately around us, almost like a zone of security. We are close on the stairwell and our defenses are down. All we have is each other, and there is a feeling of working together to make it out safely. We are strong. A few steps below, David calls out. There are firemen coming up the stairs. Everyone move to the side. I go down to where David stands. It's the 30th floor, and here they come. As they approach, we instinctively string out into a single file line to let them pass. The firefighters are loaded down with equipment. Besides having to wear protective thigh-length jacket and pants, most of them carry 50 or 60 pounds of gear, including helmets, gloves, axes, and air tanks. They are tired and sweaty, and they're not even halfway up to the fire. Later, reports on the events of September 11th would suggest that the firefighters in the stairwell didn't know much more about what was going on than we did. Cell phones and radios weren't working well and communication was spotty at best. Oral histories from who survived say they were the details and knew absolutely nothing about the reality of the impending crisis. Hey, buddy, are you okay? The very first of a long line of firefighters stops and talks to me on the 30th floor. I'm fine. I feel Russell moving and I know he is petting her. It doesn't seem like the time to give him a lecture about not petting a guide dog in harness. We're going to send somebody down the stairs with you. You don't have to do that. Things are going fine and I don't think I need help. Well, we're going to send somebody down with you, because we want to make sure you get down okay. I think of the millions of pieces of burning paper raining down outside my office windows. These guys need to get up those stairs to fight the fire. You don't have to do that. I can tell he's determined to help me. I've got a guide dog and we're good. Nice dog, he says, stroking Russell. She is friendly, as usual, and gently mouths his hand. Anyway, you can't get lost going downstairs. I try to make it light. His voice deepens and takes on a bit of an edge. I can tell he's used to being listened to. We're going to send somebody with you. I want to tell him my blindness isn't a handicap, but it's not the right time for that lecture either. I use the last gun in my arsenal. Look, my friend David is here. He can see, and we're fine. The firefighter turns to David. Are you with him? Is everything okay? David reassures him we're fine. 63. I hear him shrug his shoulders and resettle the tank on his back, and I know he's about to head upstairs. The men below him stir, restless. They're anxious to get upstairs and get to it. Is there anything we can do to help you guys? I ask. No, he says. You've got to go. He gives Russell one last pat. She kisses his hand and then he is gone. I would realize later that this touch was probably the last unconditional love he ever got. I tighten my grip on the harness. The cold water is long gone, and I can taste the jet fuel again. Forward. We head down the stairs. I think about Russell and the firefighter and wonder, can she smell courage? I've had a lifetime to develop the skills needed to navigate through a world not set up for me. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sight is not the only game in town. Blindness is not a handicap, it's something I've always lived with. The real handicap comes from the prejudices people have about blindness. I knew the firefighter was only trying to help, but sometimes help is not what I need. Even so, the firefighter couldn't be diverted until I pointed out that I had a sighted colleague assisting me. I just use a few different tools than other people do. One of the tools I got along the way allowed me to do something I've always wanted to do: pilot an airplane. But first let me tell you about some of the others. It all started with Braille, my entry into the world of words and ideas. Unfortunately, the majority of blind people cannot read Braille. A tactile system developed in Paris by Louis Braille in 1821. Braille is a reading and writing language all blind people learn how to use. By using combinations of up to 6 raised dots, a person can interpret printed codes for letters of the alphabet or combinations of letters by running an index finger the raised surfaces. In 4th grade, my parents bought me a Braille writer from Germany, called a Marburg. A Braille writer is a wood and metal machine about half the size of a typewriter. 6 Braille keys and a spacing key are made of wood topped with ivory. The 6 keys operate the mechanism that produces dots to form the letters, contractions, symbols used to write Braille. Paper is fed into our cylindrical paper roller, and turning knobs at either end of the roller feeds the paper into the machine. The Perkins Brailler, manufactured by Perkins Products, Howe Press in Massachusetts, was the best Braille writer on the market, but it cost more than $100, a small fortune at the time. The Marburg was half that, so I used it for 3 years before the local Lions Club bought me a Perkins. When I was 9, I discovered talking books and became enthralled with Perry Mason, the defense attorney determined to prove his client's innocence, and Nero Wolfe, the fat, gourmet private detective. I listened to many classic and contemporary books recorded on 12-inch records. These books were created by a program administered by the Library of Congress. Special librairies were established throughout the United States to distribute or loan out these books to blind people. Some books required 10 to 20 records, and I remember hearing that the recording of the rise and fall of the Third Reich required 56 records. I decided to skip that one. I still listen to talking books, work on my computer, and use Braille daily. But instead of a wood, metal, and ivory manual Braille-like computer about the size of Writer, I now use a Braille Note, a small a medium-size hardcover book with a tactile display that allows me to electronically read and write in Braille with no monitor needed. Another technological tool I use daily is a talking smartphone. I have software on my computer that operates a screen reader that verbalizes the information contained in documents, spreadsheets, and on websites. After years of practice, I can listen to and decipher the voice of my screen reader at hundreds of words a minute. The voice sounds a little like an auctioneer on speed, but it allows me to get through email and documents quickly. Just a couple of years ago, along came a game changer that enabled me to do something I never thought I'd be able to do: read my mail. Think about it. For a blind person to read mail, he has to ask a friend or hire an assistant to help read it. But now, thanks to the KNFB Reader by Mobile Products, I can read any sort of print, whether menus, magazines, instructions, labels, recipes, or even junk mail. It works like this. Using a cell phone, the user takes a photo of the print to be read and the character recognition software, in conjunction with high-quality text-to-speech, reads the contents of the document aloud. The KNFB Reader is the great-grandchild of the Kurzweil reading machine, the world's very first omni-font optical character recognition system. This remarkable machine was invented by Raymond Kurzweil, a futurist and inventor who came up with a computer program capable of recognizing text written in any font. Before that time, scanners had only been able to read text written in a very few standardized fonts. Kurzweil had known he wanted to be an inventor since the age of 6. While a student at MIT, he became interested in using computers for pattern recognition. His ideas were innovative but needed a real-world application. One day Kurzweil was on an airplane and struck up a conversation with a blind man sitting next to him. He asked what type of technology would be most helpful in addressing a blind person's needs. He expected the answer to be related to mobility. Instead, the man said the technology that would be the most helpful would be a device that could read print. After that chance conversation, Kurzweil decided that the best application of his scanning technology would be to create a reading machine that would allow blind people to understand written text by having a computer read it to them aloud. My very first job out of college, in a remarkable stroke of luck, I got to work with Raymond Ray Kurzweil, now an internationally recognized inventor and futurist. Ray first approached the National Federation of the Blind, NFB, with his idea for a reading machine back in 1974. They were skeptical at first, but after an eye-opening demonstration at the inventor's laboratory on Rogers Road in Massachusetts, where the reading machine read some of the materials the NFB brought, they began a working relationship. With Ray's help, the NFB approached foundations for funding and purchased 5 machines, which were placed in various locations around the country for blind people to use. These were the prototypes and were about the size of an apartment-sized washing machine. The working on human factor studies and coming up with ways to make the machine better and even more user-friendly, later ended up moving into the sales force and selling the commercial version of the product. I took a Dale Carnegie sales course and helped to move the reading machine into the corporate world, where it was a great product for companies who wanted to scan documents. Eventually Xerox purchased Kurzweil's company in order to get at the scanner technology and brought in their own people. I was the last non-Xerox person to be laid off from the sales force. During my time in Boston, I became friends with Aaron Kleiner, who had been Ray's roommate at MIT and who worked closely with Ray. Once I talked Aaron into going with me to see the first Star Wars movie. It was a very big deal and lines were long. He couldn't believe a blind guy wanted to go to the movies. He thought it was even more hilarious when I asked him to describe the visuals. That was a challenge, Aaron said. I'll never forget trying to describe the cantina scene. There's a guy with the head of a grasshopper and the body of a horse. Aaron and I had an even more interesting experience at a ritzy restaurant in Boston's Back Bay. There were 3 of us, Aaron, his wife, and me. The minute we walked in the front door, the maitre d' took one look at my guide dog, Holland, and said, "We're sorry. We don't allow dogs. You can't come in here." I wasn't too upset, since I dealt with this before. "This is wrong," I said. "They don't know the law." We left and had dinner at a different restaurant, but Aaron's wife was shaking. She was so angry. I told her, "Don't worry. I know what to do." The next day, I printed out a copy of the guide dog law and contacted the local chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. I rounded up 6 or 7 other blind people with guide dogs, and we showed up for dinner back at the restaurant with the snooty maitre d'. We opened the door and surged in, a pack of blind warriors with our trusty dogs. The maitre d' stopped, looked at us, blinked, considered his options, caved. Welcome, he said. We had a wonderful dinner and were treated well. The restaurant staff was solicitous, even offering food to the guide dog's blind power. The Kurzweil reading machine was revolutionary. On January 13, 1976, the finished product was rolled out by Raymond Kurzweil and NFB during a news conference. It gained him national recognition. On the day of the machine's unveiling, Walter Cronkite used the machine to give his signature send-off, and that's the way it is, January 13, 1976. While listening to the Today Show, musician Stevie Wonder heard a demonstration of the device and purchased the first production version of the Kurzweil reading machine, beginning a lifelong friendship with Ray. Ray was later inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for this invention. He was also awarded the National Medal of Technology by President Bill Clinton for pioneering new technologies. Ray was always interested in music and went on to start a company that developed the most state-of-the-art music synthesizer in the industry. He ended up selling that company to Yamaha. Later he started working on voice recognition, and the most successful programs currently on the market are based on algorithms he created. That washing machine-sized reading machine that originally cost $50,000 is now under $2,000, and I carry the software on my cell phone so I can use it to read anything, anywhere, anytime. Oh, and one last tool. This is the one that allowed me to fly a plane. Not long ago I purchased a GPS system that integrated with my Braille note-taker. This system was developed by another blind man, Mike May, and his company, the Sendero Group. I had to fly to a speaking engagement in Idaho. My brother-in-law Gary Ashurst had arranged for me to deliver a speech in Haley, Idaho, and he also arranged for a friend to come to Boise to fetch me in his private plane. It was a clear and beautiful autumn day. While we were walking to his four-seater Cessna, the pilot noticed my Braille note hanging over my shoulder. He also examined my new GPS receiver and started asking questions. Before we took off, I showed him how it worked and told him I was going to use it to track our flight. I got Russell settled in, I buckled up, and we took off. Just after we lifted off the runway, the pilot asked me a question I never thought I would hear. How would you like to fly the plane to Haley? I didn't need a second invitation. After all, if I could learn to hear a coffee table, ride my bike around Palmdale, hop on a horse, play golf, and drive a car around the UC Irvine campus, then I could certainly fly a plane. Since I was sitting in the right-hand seat, which also contained full access to the equipment necessary to fly the plane, I took the controls. I got some instructions on how to use the stick and other relevant controls, and then the pilot released the operations to me. My trusty GPS talked me through the skies above Idaho and guided me to the Haley Airport in about an hour. Russell snored through the whole thing. Rue was able to land the plane with a few instructions. In the process, we noticed the altimeter on the GPS was not quite accurate. In fact, it was 100 feet off, showing that we were lower than we actually were. It didn't ruffle me much. I'd rather err on the low side than think the plane was higher than it really was. For blind people, emerging technology is changing the rules of the game, and the sky's the limit.